brought to you by Steph Curry's Points. You can get all you need in the last 3 minutes of the game. Welcome back to another Boxscore Geek show. My name is Andres Alvarez, and I'll be your host. You can find me on Twitter as Nerd Numbers. With me, as always, is my amazing producer, Brian.
Hi, Dre. Whatever you want today.
I was
Whatever
going
you
to say,
need.
Patrick's been out 2 weeks in a row, so this could be like a Lou Gehrig situation. You just, sneak up there and then just take his role forever and play for like a million games or whatever Lou Gehrig's record was.
Okay, that's good. The early Lou Gehrig, right? Not the end when he got the disease. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
yes,
good.
I'm not wishing any diseases on our producers.
Thank you.
Although I don't know, would you take the trade-off of being one of the greatest podcast
Wow.
producers in the history of podcasts if it meant you got a disease? Like, think about that as a listener. Like, is the trade-off worth it? All right, we went dark there. We'll be talking the NBA Finals. Oh, and sorry, Brian Foster, co-host and producer, and you can find him on Twitter as Boxscore Brian. Anything non-morbid you want to say, Brian, to start the show off?
You should probably get right into the NBA stuff.
No more bad hypotheticals with terrible stuff. I'll be interested. I don't think I can quite bring myself to put it as this week's poll. Speaking of that, let's get into this. Last week's poll, I'm not going to lie, Brian, this was a little disheartening to me because, as you know, we do the show every week, and usually after I listen to the show, I come up with a poll that I throw out to get some kind of user interaction. I prefer polls sometimes to comments. You heard me rant about comments last week. And, sometimes I'll be kind of sad by the lack of, interaction with some of the polls. We usually get a good baseline, but I really like it when they go off. Last week's poll had one of the largest interactions we've seen recently on a poll, and it was a joke by me. So, Brian, if you want to put this up.
Oh, it's up.
After last week's show, I think we were, 3 games in? I think we were 2 games in, and the third game was on that night, and it made it even easier because LeBron James went off that third game. I basically said, who is the finals MVP, LeBron James or LeBron James? What's the current number at, Brian?
Well, LeBron on the left is at 50, and LeBron on the right is at 86. And I think I can see why looking at these photos now. LeBron on the left, just a nice little dunk, but LeBron on the right, he's doing this huge chin up, like his head is way up over the rim. So I think people must have been impressed with that dunk a little bit more.
I'm not really a designer at all, but like my perspective when I pick those 2 photos is one is up and to the right and one is down and to the left a little.
Oh,
you got a
yeah.
contrast. And I try and do that sometimes where sometimes when I do player versus player on the polls, I'll have like the player on the right facing right and the player on the left facing left. So it gives a nice contrast. Anyway, let's actually talk a little bit about LeBron James because hearkening back, I think, to the first or second show we did on the finals from Patrick where he gave his predictions, he basically said he thought this series was going to be over in 4 or 5 and that if LeBron James really put his mind to it, he might just have one of those WTF games and steal one. And we've almost seen LeBron James have 3 of those games. I mean, what's really remarkable to consider is that we were almost at the point where the Cavs could have, in theory, last night really been 9 minutes away from winning an NBA title and up, because if you recall, the first game went into overtime and they lost it at the last second. Then they won, then they were up 2-1, so they could have in theory been up 3-0, and then they were actually leading in the fourth quarter last night. So it's a tad remarkable to think that a team we basically said this is over, this is done, this is the most lopsided NBA Finals in history, to think that they actually few bounces, a few whatever away from potentially having a title. And I think I want to let you jump in and defend the words a little bit here. All I'll say to that is that speaks to the variance of small sample size. Basically, anything can happen in the playoffs. Now, what we've seen basically is bad teams tend to be usually about a 1-5 underdog to good teams. And so what that means is you might expect to see 1 or 2 upsets in the playoffs. You might expect to see an 8 seed defeat the 1 seed in the right circumstances every couple of years. So, of course, this isn't like outside of the realm of possibility. If there were error bars around what could happen in the finals, this is certainly not on the outset of it. Kind of a reverse situation we can talk about, actually, is in the 70s, the Philadelphia 76ers are playing the Portland Trailblazers. The irony is, if you look at the regular season numbers, the Portland Trailblazers were a superior team, but the Philadelphia 76ers ended up 2-1, I believe, and then ended up ended up losing out. So, it's certainly in the realm of this happening in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it has been a really crazy series. What you're just talking about there made me think of the 538 article by Nate Serval himself, actually, I think. We're going to bring that up later, probably.
You enjoy doing this to me every week, don't you? But anyway, keep going.
I'm not trolling, but yeah, no, but I was just going to say that no, the best part about that article, anyway, is just to show kind of how weird the shooting has been in this series so far. And yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah, it's weird things can happen in small sample sizes. That's pretty much it. And we're also going to talk about the small ball lineups too, Mozgov and Bogut. So anyway, that's my preview.
So talking the NBA Finals. By the way, I actually like we're getting a little bit of interaction thanks to Twitch. So Christian on Twitter, who is Shea Enriquez, I believe, and then some underscores, said should be a quick show in response to me saying we'll be talking NBA Finals. I actually agree with that sentiment. Well, I did send you a lot of links this week, Brian. I don't have a ton to say on the finals, but let's talk a few things. Okay, the first thing, this finals actually really, really reminds me of the 1998 finals with Michael Jordan, because if you look, this is kind of an interesting thing. If you look at the 1998 numbers, Michael Jordan was not a good shooter. In fact, the Bulls in general were not a good shooting team. If you look at what won that battle for the Bulls, it is honestly defense, because basically the Bulls didn't shoot very well, but neither did the Jazz. And so Michael Jordan got the most points in that team. I've said this many, many times before. Dennis Rodman doesn't get his due for the end of Michael Jordan's career. But it reminded me a lot of basically LeBron James now, with a slight difference, which is Michael Jordan took a lot of shots. He wasn't a very good shooter, but the Bulls still won out thanks to good defense and out rebounding the opponent. The Cavaliers, when they did stick in it, basically have stuck around thanks to everything but shooting. They've got, if we're looking at Dean Oliver's 4 factors, you can see these on Basketball Reference. They're basically, their effective field goal percentage versus the Warriors is just horrendous. It's much, much worse. But they're they're better at turnovers, they're better at offensive rebounding, and they're better at, getting to the line, free throws. And so the real reason, if we want to look at LeBron James actually being an MVP candidate in these finals, is just he is absurdly good at rebounding this series, but his shooting leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, it's bad. I mean, I didn't realize how bad it was. I was sure I was going to compare him to Michael Jordan and say that, when I saw Michael Jordan had, I think, 51.4% true shooting in 98, I was sure that LeBron James was going to be close. He's actually at 48.4% true shooting. Just not good. But, we've mentioned this before about LeBron James. The one thing he does well is he does everything else. So he's, almost averaging a triple-double. He's, the only person that's passing now that Irving's down. He's rebounding like mad. And as we mentioned, I think last week, that front court for the Cavaliers actually looks quite potent. LeBron James and Tristan Thompson is a really terrifying, thing to look at. And, I'm actually really excited to think of the prospect of LeBron James, Tristan Thompson, Kevin Love starting together, and Mozgov off the bench. I think that's a very exciting team next year.
It's funny you say that, because I was talking to someone else about that. What are the Cavs going to do next year? And I don't know. Do you think they can afford to pay the money that all those guys are going to want? This is a little bit of an aside, but Tristan Thompson has already said he wants a max contract. Kevin Love and LeBron James, of course, already have one. That's 3 guys with max contracts. So, you're going to give one to Mozgov or Verjao also. Well, I guess the real question is, what is Mozgov going to cost?
Well, Mozgov, if you can get him cheap, take him cheap. If he's too expensive, let him go. I mean, he's a good player. He's not a great player. We'll talk a little bit more about Mozgov in a second. The thing I would say, and this is really rough, and no one likes this in Cavs fans, you won't like this either, and especially with the injuries, I don't know how you do this, but really there's an odd man out on this team, and it ain't LeBron James or Kevin Love or Tristan Thompson. It's Kyrie Irving. If I were this team, I think when we were talking Kevin Love when he was on the Timberwolves, what we basically said is it was really, really silly for the Wolves to try and move Love as quickly as possible to get assets, when the reality is they had a star with this short window to win a title. And when you have a star with a short window to win a title, what you do is you go all in and go for the title. And, the Cavaliers, they're in an uphill battle, right? They're going to have to win 2 out of 3 with a sudden death on any loss. So that's a rough spot to be in. If I'm the Wolves and I know that I can get LeBron James, Kevin Love, and Tristan Thompson on the team next year, if they can tell Kevin Love, look, you're injured, we're not going to give you a long-term deal. That would be the only thing I'd be against. Don't give Kevin Love a long-term deal unless it's a discount. You can get those 3 guys. I would try and move Irving. That's my take. And I would actually try and look for a more pass first guard. I've heard actually about LeBron James that he was really, really mean to how am I forgetting his name on the Heat. Not a very good point guard, but they're
Probably
Mario,
Norris Cole.
no, Norris Cole is horrible. No, Mario Chalmers was
Chalmers, yeah, he was mean to Chalmers.
he was basically an average point guard, but on that team, you don't need a fantastic point guard. You just need someone who can distribute the ball and isn't terrible. If I'm the Cavaliers, I actually don't want, I think we've talked this before, I don't want Irving shooting as much as he is. And I don't know how to get around that. I don't know how to tell someone on a max deal that's, an all-star, hey, you need to shoot less. And in fact, as I think I've mentioned many, many times, if I was the star, I would say screw off, right? I'd say I'm young. I've got at least one more contract to go. I've got to keep my market value up. Playing team ball is only going to, we've talked Westbrook on this, right? Westbrook could play team ball and be amazing. Westbrook could be 3 times as good as an average point guard instead of 2 with all of his skills. But telling Westbrook to stop shooting is basically asking Westbrook, hey, could you please leave $5 million on the table next time your contract is up? And I can completely understand why he'd say no to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And is this a good segue into the Iverson talk, the low field goal percentage of LeBron? Because we've got his stats right now.
It's funny because there were 2 players. I compared, LeBron James to Michael Jordan. I actually want to give one last note on that, which is
sure.
At the 2 games into the series, I was making comments like I could see LeBron James getting Finals MVP even if the Warriors win, and people said shut up. And then 2 games later, I'm hearing that's actually becoming quite common. So the other thing that's come with that, right, is people saying, LeBron James versus Michael Jordan and actually starting to take LeBron James's side. It's not like people weren't on that side before. Patrick and I have talked about that, where, no realistic basketball fan doesn't think that LeBron James versus Michael Jordan is at least a valid discussion. But I'm starting to see more people side with LeBron James now. And what I said about that is, Michael Jordan and LeBron James both played hundreds of basketball games, tens of thousands of minutes up to this point in their respective careers. If 3 games, and at this point 4 games is the tipping point between them being, one better than the other, then they were pretty close to begin with. So that's kind of my point there. And what I'll give Michael Jordan, the one place in my mind Michael Jordan does legitimately, unfortunately, beat LeBron James is his finals performance. LeBron James traditionally has actually floundered in the finals. He's been much worse than he normally is during the rest of the playoffs or the regular season. This season, not so much. It's because he's doing the other things. But I could, this finals, I don't think cements LeBron James over Michael Jordan. I thought he was already there on his own. But yeah, like I said, the interesting thing to me looking at LeBron James, he's basically shooting like Iverson. And I don't know what's going on. I mean, we had some theories with Coach Nick where basically it's like maybe he's not getting fouled as much. Somebody I think it was Robert Currents on my timeline this week pointed out that he lost a bunch of weight in the offseason, and that could easily affect how dominant he is close to the hoop. And then I don't know where his three-point shooting has gone. He was never a fantastic three-point shooter, but that was back in the day, for instance, against him versus Carmelo Anthony. That was one thing that differentiated him between Carmelo Anthony, which is he would take 2 steps back and take a three-point shot close to league average. Melo would shoot a mid-range jumper better than league average, but an average three-point shot is worth much, much more than a slightly above average mid-range shot. That was part of the key to his greatness, and his three-point shot has left him this year. So I don't know where his shooting's gone, but it does make me a little sad that everybody's going to probably be looking at the fact that LeBron James is averaging close to 40 points in these finals, and he's not really that good, right? I mean, the one other thing is the rest of his team isn't that good either at shooting, with the exception of one player who will talk. But, the fact of the matter is LeBron James shooting, 48.4% true shooting, and let's see, what's his effective field goal percentage?
43.3.
43.3. He's actually shooting just a touch better than his team. So, uh, yeah, I mean, maybe that's a testament to the Warriors' defense, which we already knew was good. Maybe LeBron James is slowing down, maybe other stuff. But yeah, I was impressed that he's at Iverson level right now, which is not a good thing. Unlike Iverson, though, he's pulling down over 10 boards and almost getting 10 assists for a big man, which is a good thing.
Yeah, the assists are impressive, and just looking through these stats on these are through 5 games in the 2015 finals on Basketball Reference that you linked. He does have 41.3% usage as well, and of course we always say usage is not a stat that indicates winning. It's a garbage stat, but it does indicate he's holding the ball a lot.
No, that's not how you should view this. The way if you're going to use usage, so we'll give Brian a tutorial, and by proxy, you the audience a tutorial. I hate the usage statistic because and actually, Brian, I'm trying to make an example of you because most people use it incorrectly, as Brian has just done. Sorry to call you out, Brian.
Sure.
We'll learn together, and on future shows, no problems. The way you can interpret the usage metric is to say, how are the players on my team spending the available possessions, and how do we credit who is spending the possessions? So basically, what it's saying is, the Cavaliers basically get about 100 possessions a game on offense to spend. And of those 100 possessions, LeBron James is spending, 43 of them? Basically
41.3%.
41 of them. And basically, he's spending them in a combination of taking shots, or turning the ball over. That's basically how you can interpret it. So, if you want to use that, I mean, yeah, LeBron James is spending a bunch of the points. And the one issue we can give him is actually he's not the best player to be spending these because really his shooting isn't that great. But the way he's making up for it is if you're not going to spend the points well, if you have a high usage but bad shooting or high turnover rate, then what you really need to be doing is doing other things. And that's where LeBron James, I still give him credit, is because he's still rebounding and still assisting.
Well, so I bring up the usage as a proxy for sort of how much energy he has to expend by taking all these shots. That's something people say in the NBA. So do you see anything with that? Which stat would you prefer here instead of usage then?
All right.
Just shots attempted?
I don't know if you saw my little hand wave. For the audio only listeners, I was just like shaking my hand at Brian because it's like, yeah, whatever.
Set this right, Dre.
Any of the because they take more shots, their efficiency. I hate the usage curve.
No, not efficiency. This is just what I'm getting at is the physical toll on LeBron because he had to take IV fluids after one of the most recent games. So this is what I'm trying to get at.
There are lots of fantastic theories as to why his shooting is not, doing as well as everybody, would say. And I can give a lot of them, just not take more shots. By the way, what I would use, and I can copy this on the script to you, Brian, is, like I said, NBA.com has player tracking. I really need to write this.
Yeah, we were showing that last week. I love the player tracking.
The depth of the usage statistic, which I still need to talk about. So I just linked that. Basically, there's a player tracking box score that you can look at, and it shows that LeBron James, basically touched the ball 116 times. In the game, which was more than the second place person, which is Dellavedova with 70. Now, what we can give LeBron right is LeBron James passed the ball 69 times. So that's one reason I don't like usage so much, because it's slightly misleading, because Russell Westbrook can hold the ball a lot, hold the ball the whole possession, and LeBron James can hold the ball and then pass it. And yeah, both of these players hold the ball a lot, but how they use the ball is a little different. And that's one thing the usage statistic does not incorporate, which I would like, is assists. And now that we have the data on the player tracking, passing. It's really important to know if a player that's holding the ball a lot, if they're just, isoing up and then taking a bad shot, or if they're passing it around and then if they have to, taking a bad shot at the end. Something that is just obvious in these finals, by the way, the exact same player tracking that I like is LeBron James is just not getting open shots. He had 23 contested field goals. When it comes to defense, that really is the key thing. And actually, this should make Cleveland Cavaliers fans a little depressed, because if we look at all of the Cavaliers, basically all of them, with the exception of 2 players in the last game, Dellavedova and Iman Shumpert, had more contested shots than uncontested shots. And that's a testament to the Warriors' defense. However, Dellavedova had 8 uncontested field goals, and he connected on one of them. Iman Shumpert had 7 uncontested field goals and connected on 3 of them. So this is actually, I got to give big props to the Warriors to basically say they're not letting the good shooters get uncontested shots, and the players that are getting uncontested shots aren't connecting. So, I mean, that's the right decision, right? Let the bad shooters stay open, keep the good shooters covered.
Yeah, and I've got the player tracking up here now, so people can look at that. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of my overall thoughts watching the last couple games. Is the Cavalier offense looks pretty brutal, and you know, regardless of how tired LeBron is or isn't, he is dominating the ball. And you know, maybe no one else on the team could come up with a better shot than a 44% contested shot. Like maybe they're just not capable of generating that shot right now.
Let's get into the next category, which you talked about. You want to talk a little small ball.
Sure.
On the Cavaliers, the best anybody is doing is around 51% true shooting, which is not good. That's, you know, it's under. I would normally bash LeBron James, but like we've seen LeBron James shoot much better, and if his teammates are shooting that bad, I'm like, shoot away, LeBron. See if you can find your touch. There is one player that is actually quite good at shooting, and one player who in his career has traditionally been very, very good at shooting. In fact, when he was with the Nuggets, basically that was, you know, that was all he had, right? He was good on offense and not much else, and he might be doing a little better with the Cavaliers. But that's Timothy Mozgov. So Timothy Mozgov had a 57.7 true shooting percentage average in his career, you know, regular season. And then in the playoffs, he's actually been shooting quite well, except if we want to look, last game, you know, 2 games ago, this is important. So they lost by 21 points, but Mozgov actually went 9 for 16, 10 for 12 from the free throw line, got 28 points. This was in game 4 when the series got tied up. Now, you would expect in game 5, if your offense is severely struggling, maybe keep the one offensive weapon you have in the game. Nope. Timothy Mozgov got 9 minutes, only managed to get one shot in that 9 minutes, and you know didn't see the game. And then of course, you know, the Cavaliers just, you know, didn't end up doing anything on offense. And Steph Curry found a shooting touch. A stat you should enjoy as a Warriors fan, Brian, is Steph Curry in the last 3 minutes and 10 seconds of playtime managed to score 12 of his 37 points, which is freaking ridiculous.
He was launching them up there, boy, was he.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about the small ball, and I think we'll link this definitely. I'm going to preemptively give the shout out. Jonathan Weiler, congratulations, you're back on the board. He actually emailed me, I think, last week and said he'd be happy to come on the show in the offseason too, Brian, so we should be excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
But Jonathan Weiler has a good article where he talks about the finals and talks about the stupidity of small ball, talks a little bit about defense. And the reality is, here's kind of what happened. If you look at the start of the game, in Game 5, Mozgov had 2 or 3 bad plays, and the coach benched him. And then Mozgov came back and in the 4th had 1 or 2 bad plays, coach benched him. And another reason people were giving is that the Warriors, and you told me there's nothing wrong with him, he just decided not to play him. The Warriors decided not to play Andrew Bogut.
Yeah, officially he's not injured, but I mean, he's Bogut, you know, he's a 7-footer. He's been wearing down his body all these years. So he's probably a little dinged up, but he could go for sure if he, you know, if they wanted to, but they decided not to.
I like the conspiracy theory there. Where, I mean, we've seen that, by the way. On the Warriors, we've seen the Warriors front office come out and say, Bogut's fine. And then like 2 weeks later, they're like, what we meant by Bogut's fine is he has a season-ending injury and he's going to get surgery and you'll see him next year. And we knew that at the time we told you he was fine. But kind of the basic point on small ball is we think small ball is a myth. I'll have to look up the article. I apologize, I didn't give this to you, but Patrick's written on it. The idea is play your best players. This is what the Bulls did back in the day when they didn't really have a big. They just played their best players. And their best players happened to be Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, all players that, you know, weren't really bigs. Even though Dennis Rodman played like a power forward center, you know, I think it was like 6'7". So, but the point is you play your best players. The Warriors have a huge advantage in that they're really deep. And, you know, with this year, with Klay Thompson and Harrison Barnes turning it around, this team doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. So the Warriors can roll out a lot of different lineups that are legitimately very strong lineups that have nothing to do with playing shorter players or playing taller players. It's just playing good players. And something else we kind of noticed when we were looking over the numbers, Brian, is that Bogut has been getting outplayed. That has been the one thing going for the Cavaliers that we've talked about. The emergence of Tristan Thompson, who has been very good and has stayed good in these playoffs. LeBron James has always been good as a big. Timothy Mozgov actually playing well. These three things together have kind of been what's kept them in the game. And Bogut has been getting outplayed. But that said, if the Warriors sit Bogut, who's been getting outplayed, and the Cavaliers' decision is then to sit Mozgov, what they've done is they've erased the advantage. I found that coaches in the NBA often like to think of it as a chess match. They do this, I do this. It's like football, right? They're going to run this offense, so I need to run this defense. They're going to have two guys trying to run, so I got to get two cornerbacks out there. They're going to have three runners. I'm going to have to block this way. No, in basketball, it's get your best players out there. That's it. And you might have some logic for overlapping skill sets, right? In fact, I would argue, like in the Heat days, this was an interesting strategy I think Arturo and I had talked about, which is just one of LeBron James or Dwayne Wade should always be on the court. And so that could potentially mean that Wade could have come off the bench. Now, that could easily, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade could both play 36 minutes. This isn't hard math, right? If there's 48 minutes in the game, 36, that means basically they just have to have 12 non-overlapping minutes. But the basic point being, you just put your best players on the court. You try and make sure you've at least got the necessary skill sets covered, someone who can pass, someone who can shoot, someone who can rebound. But if your opponent takes off a big player, you don't take off a big player too when that big player is essentially your only offensive weapon. So it was ridiculous to see that happen. And the defense I'm going to see, and you're wrong, by the way, everybody who says this, don't put it in the comments. You've said it to me on Twitter. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. I haven't even said what you're wrong about, but I'm going to say one more time. You're wrong. Anybody that says to me, yeah, but Mozgov played really poorly in those 9 minutes, shut up. That is, you don't bench a good player who has a couple bad minutes and justify yourself in saying, well, he was playing bad. I keep coming back to baseball comparisons, Brian, because it's baseball season, but you wouldn't bench Stanton or Bryce Harper in the first or second inning because they swung at two bad pitches. So why on earth would you pull Mozgov for 2 quarters because he had 2 bad plays in the first quarter?
Well, so for this specific example, the only sort of counter argument I'd make is that maybe Mozgov isn't quite as established as Stanton or Bryce Harper yet. He's, kind of risen up late in these playoffs. And, he's still sort of young, so maybe, this is his real playing level, but he could also just be playing above his head these last few games.
He's definitely been playing above what we've seen in past, but the one thing that he's had consistent is his shooting. And that's what I'm saying is, and that's the other thing, right? If you've only got one hitter on your baseball team and that hitter takes 2 bad cuts, you don't cut that one hitter because that's the only offensive weapon you have. And that's essentially, we've seen in the past LeBron James can do everything. And this playoff season, that's almost true with the exclusion of shooting. So with the loss of Kevin Love, with the loss of Kyrie Irving, basically the Cavs have one consistent player that actually scores on a regular basis. If you look at his field goal percentage, because I'm looking, we have to go back to the third game in Chicago where he had a 0 for 7 stinker, but he's been shooting really well this entire playoff series. His field goal percentage has been quite good. So it's like you don't get rid of that weapon. And in fact, we can't, their 2-point win had him go 5 for 8 from the field, 7 for 12 from the line and score 17 points. Their 20-point loss had him get 28 points. That's been your only consistent offensive weapon. People don't get this. LeBron doesn't count because even though he's averaging 40 points a game, his efficiency is terrible. So I can't side by them pulling him from the game. And the fact that they stayed in it is remarkable. And we can only wonder what would have happened if they'd have left Mozgov in the game the entire fourth.
Yeah, and it's weird because, again, their offense to me just seems bafflingly bad. Maybe everyone's hurt or they're too tired to run a real offense, I don't know, but just the all-isolation every time.
Let's be careful on those narratives because there are 2 really simple explanations. Okay. The Cavaliers lost 2 of their key players. Now, Kevin Love is an underutilized player, but he was still a key player on their offense. The Cavaliers lost 2 of their key players on offense, including the point guard. And the point guard is a really tough player to replace. And Dellavedova, he's getting a lot of credit for his defense, maybe so, but he is horrendous on offense. So the Cavaliers lost 2 starters, essentially, on their offense. They are playing the best defense in the league. You know, this is the exact same thing that Patrick brought up when I was trying to dissect how the Houston Rockets fell apart and how they figured out Harden. And Patrick basically shrugged and said, you know, the Rockets are dealing with a lot of injuries, and this is a really good defensive team. We shouldn't be looking at them and saying, wow, they really figured out James Harden. We should be looking at them and going, well, wow, it's not really surprising to think that a good defense can take apart an offense with a lot of injuries.
Well, sure. I mean, yeah, we maybe shouldn't be surprised the offense is playing so poorly against a defense that good, but at the same time, it's obvious why they aren't. They're just taking bad shots and running a lot of isolation. And maybe they aren't capable of doing better because I guess the basic strategy is, well, we know we're the worst team, so we need to slow down the pace, make sure there's less possessions in the entire game, which is good, right? We think the worst team should be trying to do that. But then even if you're milking the shot clock a little, can't you run a few pick and rolls every now and then? I mean, I'm not saying they don't run any, but it seems like the offense is not doing as many things as it was earlier. That's all.
I don't have much to say on that. I mean, it's also hard. We talk this a lot in terms of basketball, where it's like it's really easy to point at players and act like they're not doing stuff because they're bad players or whatever. And
yeah.
the more realistic answer is maybe they can't. Dellavedova is not a good NBA player. Now, he's one of the top basketball players in the world, so I don't want to take that away from him. And he's played above his head, you know, same with Mozgov. But it's like, you know, what I find amusing about this conversation is I'm being hypercritical about how the Cavaliers aren't playing up to their potential to win. And, you know, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how this was a stupid series and how we were just going to be talking about the Warriors blowout at the end. Now, to be fair, by the way, the Warriors' 3 wins, they're, you know, 8 points, 21 points, 13 points, and their 2 losses were by a combined 7 points. So this is the Warriors we're used to, and it seems unlikely that the Cavs are going to steal another 1 or 2, although I really hope they do. I really hope this goes to 7. But it is funny that we're, like, yelling at the Cavaliers who, you know, we counted as dead not too long ago. And I think the bigger reality is just like they played above their heads for a couple games, got everybody excited. You know, mean comparison is Jeremy Lin with Linsanity. Take nothing away from Jeremy Lin. He has been an above-average point guard his entire NBA career. He's been a very good player. But he had, you know, a 2-week stretch where he played at Michael Jordan levels, and everybody was really excited about, you know, Jeremy Lin being the next Michael Jordan. And then when he didn't live up to it, everybody got really critical and was like, what happened to your game, man? What are you doing wrong? And the reality could just be, hey, I had a couple of good games that I shouldn't have had, and that was awesome, and now I'm back to reality.
Yeah, no, I agree overall. Of course, we shouldn't blame the Cavs and be expecting them to win. But at the same time, I'm a little suspicious that they're, you know, kind of doing the best they can. It feels like Blatt and LeBron are just kind of like, all right, we're doing this old school style. We're doing it Kobe style, Iverson style. That's it. You know, we're going to. So, yeah, maybe that's all they can do. I don't know.
Now, on that, let's actually segue to our last guy. This is going to be a quick show. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's segment. This is something Patrick said that blew my mind. It's been tough that Patrick can't be on the show the last 2 weeks, but it's been kind of rough because we have keeping you in the loop. We have like email conversations to kind of prepare the show. Finals are a lot easier because basically like, oh my God, can you believe that happened? And Brian's like, don't worry about it. The Warriors got this. It looks like you're turning out to be right. But Patrick blew my mind because I compared LeBron James to Iverson. I said, you know, LeBron James is shooting like Iverson. And if you want to put up that Vine that Patrick sent along, basically Steph Curry is actually a lot like Iverson, except he takes 3-pointers. So Patrick blew my mind and said, imagine an Allen Iverson that had the exact same game Allen Iverson had, except instead of taking, and I'm sorry, I'm going to try and do this. And if you want to go for this, if you look up Allen Iverson on Basketball Reference, Brian, and then just look at his shot charts, I want to look at like 2001 Iverson shot chart. So, like, I'm going Allen Iverson. I want to look at a shot chart. And basically, what would be interesting is, like, if we look in 2001, Allen Iverson took, I may have to write this article. Actually, Patrick, I'm telling you this on the air. Allen Iverson took 633 shots from 16 feet to 3-point. Like, you know, just not, you know, mid-range pull-ups, right? And of those, he only connected on, like, 41%. And you just have to wonder, like, if Allen Iverson could actually shoot threes, but for what it's worth, Allen Iverson was not a good 3-point shooter. But if Allen Iverson could have been like a 34% field 3-point shooter and taken shots from there, imagine what his game would have been like. So that was remarkable to me to think about. Basically, Steph Curry is what people think Allen Iverson was. Steph Curry is a player that takes all of these crazy shots, sometimes shots that his coach just shakes his head at, but they're three-pointers, so they're good value. So he does space the floor, and then he does actually pass the ball. So that was kind of mind-blowing to me to be like, oh, yeah, Steph Curry is what people think Iverson was. And if Iverson was actually what Steph Curry is now, he would have been as good as people seem to remember. So that was a mind-blowing epiphany from Patrick to me.
What is we have to look up Iverson's rebounding out of curiosity. That's the one thing where Curry is amazing at. They're both good at steals, though.
I don't know.
I know. I guess we're talking about offense, but I just
Iverson. Like, by the way, one thing that Iverson was actually good at was he was quite good at like steals, and he actually did pass the ball. Like, it wasn't that Iverson was bad at some of these stats. It's like basically Allen Iverson was an above average player for a couple years in his career, but he just took a lot of really stupid shots. And actually, and his rebounding wasn't that great. That I will say. I just looked him up, and he was, not horrible, but he was slightly below average his entire career on rebounding compared to an average shooting guard. He averaged about 4.4 rebounds per game. Average shooting guard at average about 5.4. He only averaged one offensive rebound a game. Average shooting guard would average 1.5. So, there's that. He did actually pass. He actually had a decent assist to turnover ratio for a shooting guard and was quite good at steals. But, the place that Allen Iverson killed you is he averaged 51.8% true shooting for his entire career in terms of shooting. An average shooting guard over the same period would have averaged 53.6%. And then, of course, Iverson took 7 more shots per full game than an average shooting guard. So if you're shooting 2% worse than an average shooting guard and you're taking 7 more shots a game, you're actually hurting your team.
Only 7. You could have done better, AI. He could have gotten a few more up.
No, that's the point. It's like if you're, we talk about players doing what they're supposed to. It's like if you're bad at something, if you're bad at passing, don't pass because you're just going to turn the ball over. If you're bad at shooting, don't shoot. You're just going to miss. And it's hard to convince players not to.
We're talking almost 15 years ago, though, now. Do you think his coaches even said, hey, those are bad shots, you're hurting us with your, 28 points a game? I bet he thought he was doing great.
No, okay, and by the way, another Boxscore Geeks drinking game, which, we haven't had in a while. We haven't brought that up. Though my dog did make a noise, so that was one of the things on the Boxscore Geeks drinking game if my dog made noise. Now, Patrick's dog, Whiskey, makes noise in the show, too, so it's awesome. But I'm going to bring up not the Short Corner podcast, but Paul Shirley was really fascinating to me because he talked about his time in the NBA in his book, Can I Keep My Jersey? And one thing that he mentioned is Paul Shirley's this really big, tall guy, and you assume, what do you want that big, tall guy to do? If I'm a coach, I'm like, you're big and tall, rebound, box out, guard the other guy, clog the lane. And the coaches were like, you need to be more aggressive on offense. You need to put up more mid-range, like just shoot. And it was, when I was reading the book, it was kind of sad to listen to because basically what Paul Shirley said is, you have all these coaches and you get these players in, and basically what the coaches tell them is, if you want to succeed in the NBA, you got to be aggressive. You got to take shots. And I don't think that back then, I don't think there was a single coach. I think Allen Iverson got more talking tos for missing practices than he ever got for taking bad shots.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah. And I mean, that's the funny thing is, if Allen Iverson had missed every single practice he took and just stopped taking, like, if he had just stopped shooting those mid-range shots completely, just not taking a single one ever again, he could pass the ball, right? We know he could pass. So he passes the ball or just drives the lane instead. If he had done that, he could have potentially been amazing. And instead he was just, average. And there is no coach in the world, and fans in the world still contest it to this day, where I'm like, yeah, Iverson's shooting was hurting his team. And they'll go, what are you talking about?
Yeah. I don't know. I love all those rants. Those, some of them are starting to get a little bit old now. Denny Green in the NFL was a great one, and Jim Mora, of course. Practice was right up there. That's one of my favorites of all time.
I've got to ask. We should ask the fans on the show if you.
Oh, we got a little Skype delay here. Come on. All right, and we're back, guys. Welcome back, Dre.
So I hate to let you into the high-tech world that is my office. I should actually fix this. My wife used the microwave, and we have a high-watt microwave, and that actually interfered with my Wi-Fi connection. So that was what was going on there. Sorry about that.
How's it going, Dre?
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
All right. So anyway, what I was going to say is we should have there been any really good rant like in the last 5 years? Have there been any really good rants in press conferences or whatever? I'm trying to think because there have been some fantastic ones, but I'm trying to think of recent ones. And I mean, there have been some interesting things, right? Riley Curley is amazing. Marshawn Lynch, I'm just here so I don't get fined is great. But I'm looking for a solid rant, like an athlete just going off. I'm talking, we always bring up how we like WWE on the show. Like I'm looking for a WWE promo of, somebody going off, and I don't think we've seen them.
Yeah, the 90s and the 2000s were really a golden age for that. Yeah, Marshawn Lynch is the only one I can think of from the past few years, and that was kind of a different class of, comment. It was a little more cerebral than the rants, so yeah. We'll have to see. We'll have to put our question out to the commenters.
And by the way, we're just on Curry. I don't have much to say, but I guess this is a meme going around. Basically, Steph Curry has the Luigi death stare.
Yeah, I brought this up in response to Patrick. Okay, I guess this is a Vine posted by Coach Nick on B-Ball Breakdown. We'll bring this up right now. But yeah, everyone's seen this. Curry has this, it's something about the camera angle, I think, reminded people of the infamous Luigi death stare. And what is that, of course? Well, let's see, it was Timothy Burke, actually, on Deadspin, who wrote the article I'm linking, and I'm playing it with the sound right now, so we'll just enjoy it for about a minute, and then we'll come back. Yeah, Curry is riding dirty, indeed, and you can see down at the bottom here, this is from the game Mario Kart, and I don't know why, the internet's a funny place full of memes.
I love the internet. I gave Patrick a lot of credit. I love Patrick in his writing where he puts memes, and I'm actually a huge fan of memes, and I'm going to just start cribbing that, where, I mean, I don't think that should be all of the writing, but I think in good posts, and Patrick is fantastic about this. I'll give Patrick a shout out. You're not on the show, Patrick. Your use of memes and articles is great. If a well-placed meme in an article is fantastic, and Patrick is really good at that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too far. Well, first of all, yes, good job, Patrick. I don't want to go too far off on this, but that is kind of how things are going in internet media now, right? Sites like Vox and 538 we were just mentioning, they have the story streams. They're big and colorful and easy to read on mobile. So yeah, it makes sense. You got to really do something to catch someone's attention on the small screen of the phone.
Yep. Okay. I think if we want to give finals predictions, I hate to say it. I've said this like 20 times before, so this is going to be broken record time. I think the Cavs are done, especially if they're going to try and be tricky with, if Blatt's going to try and out-coach Kerr. The thing is, this sounds kind of mean, Kerr can't screw up. That lineup is so deep, and there are a few key players, right? Steph Curry is not going to get minutes restrictions. So if you took the chimp thing, right? If you have a blindfolded monkey, picking stocks, right? And you just lock Steph Curry in at point guard and then just picked random for the rest of the team, you really can't screw up the Warriors. Like, it would be really, really hard to. So Blatt can't out-coach Kerr, even if Kerr, makes bad decisions. And if he's going to go that route, I just don't see him sticking in it. I'm amazed this series was close. I'm amazed, like I said, that basically there is a 10-minute stretch of games where if things had gone a little differently, the Cavs would be champions right now, and that should be painful as all heck to Cavs fans. And I think the only last thing that I already said at the top of the show is I think LeBron James deserves Finals MVP, even if they lose, because this wasn't supposed to be a close series.
Yeah, and unless Curry or Iguodala or somebody goes off and there's still 2 more games, yeah, even then you're probably right, it's LeBron.
That to me would actually be incredible if the voters would actually go that way too. I actually get kind of happy. I was really happy that Dikembe Mutombo made first ballot, right? I was expecting the voters to screw that up. So if the voters actually gave the Finals MVP to LeBron James, and I would almost consider that recompense for the BS 2011 MVP that went to Derrick Rose, that's a travesty of justice. That was LeBron James's MVP. I can't believe they gave that to Derrick Rose.
Curry scored 37 points in the last game, though. I think if they close out in Game 6, he's just scored too many points.
Well, okay. So, by the way, sorry, I
Just in the
So,
media's eyes, anyway. In the voters' eyes.
okay, yeah, the media's eyes. But what I was going to say is, if you look at, if you just look at the finals in general. Sorry, I'm trying to get this back in front of me. I mean, like LeBron James has almost scored 200 points. Like LeBron James, if he just has a normal game, it's going to have over 200 points, and I believe that's going to be like the most, like significantly more than anybody else in the finals. So LeBron James currently sits at. Sorry, let me just get this up in front of me. LeBron James currently sits at 183 points. Second place is Curry with 131. Come on, that's 52 points difference. If you're going by yay points, LeBron James is blowing him away.
Absolutely.
So that's all I got. Actually, this is one thing we're going to have to remember to ask in the pre-show, Brian. Did you have any shout-outs this week?
Oh, I have one shout out this week, actually, Dre. I'm
Fantastic.
Yeah. I have a shout out to Ganondorf, who sent me a wonderful shirt that I'm wearing on the show right now. The Game Over shirt with holding the basketball. You can't quite see it on camera, but anyway, Ganondorf, nice. Awesome guy. Thanks for sending that shirt.
All right. Don't like streams crossing, but cool. Anyway, thanks for that shout out. And the shout out, I'm not going to put that in the notes either, Brian.
No problem.
All right. So, I already gave Patrick a shout out for his excellent use of memes. I'm going to give Jonathan Weiler a shout out for, he took a little break, but he's had a great couple of posts. We love the ESPN watch. But he had a fantastic post on the finals, just kind of encapsulates the thinking. He keeps pinging me on like asking questions about the finals too, which is great. I think that's all I actually have for this week. I give LeBron James another shout out. This shouldn't have been a close series. This really shouldn't have. And so the fact that it was an exciting finals is good. I give him all the credit in the world. And, the big what if, the horrible thing is, imagine if LeBron James was shooting like LeBron James of old. Like if he could shoot like he used to, this could have been amazing. So
yeah, and the last thing to say is, he could win 2 games in a row. It could happen.
If he shoots like he's averaging 49% true shooting in these playoffs. He's averaging 48.4% true shooting here. I'm going to try and look him up real quickly while I keep talking. But if we look at him during the regular season this year and just compared to himself, so LeBron James this season, his average true shooting was, come on, site, speed up. But his average true shooting this season was 57.7, which is the worst it's been since 2008. So, I don't see it coming back. But if it does, if he can remember how to shoot and Blatt leaves in Mozgov, this could be a series. So I don't think it'll happen, but I hope it does.
Yeah, I would almost want to be with you, but I'm okay with just one more game. That's fine with me.
Yeah, Warriors fans. All right. Well, anyway, that is our show. You can find us at boxscoregeeks.com if you happen to find this podcast through iTunes or somewhere else. On that note, you can find us as the Boxscore Geeks Show on both iTunes and Stitcher. If you want to subscribe to us, upvote us, that really helps us out. We are now regularly streaming Mondays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/nerdnumbers. If you missed the live show, you can find us if you actually want to see the video show, want to see Brian adding all the memes, the charts, the graphs, the stats. You can find those on channel Nerd Numbers on YouTube. We have the Boxscore Geeks playlist. My name is Andres Alvarez. You can find me on Twitter as Nerd Numbers. Our producer is Boxscore Brian on Twitter. And then, of course, the normal co-host, you didn't see him, but you should be following him through the playoffs if you haven't. Patrick Minton, the original NBA Geek, you can find on Twitter as NBA Geek. We'll see you next week to talk probably the conclusion of the finals. Hopefully we'll have good things to say. Anyway, look forward to seeing you then.